Is giving diplomacy every chance to prevail in negotiations while taking new action to protect U.S. troops in the region. The president will also host his cabinet at Camp David tomorrow as negotiators work to reach a deal. This is the Faulkner Focus. I'm Sandra Smith in for Harris. U.S. CENTCOM says our military carried out self-defense strikes in southern Iran, targeting missile launch sites and Iranian boats attempting to emplace mines. A senior U.S. official told Fox News 2 Iranian boats were spotted laying mines in the strait, and U.S. forces also responded to an Iranian missile site targeting U.S. warplanes. Here is Secretary of State Marco Rubio on where things stand.
These straits have to be open. They're going to be open one way or the other. So they need to be open. What's happening there is unlawful. It's illegal. It's unsustainable for the world. It's unacceptable. And I think there's strong alignment and agreement on what a preliminary draft should look like. I think that, like anything with something like this, and it's going to take a couple days to settle on. It's either going to be a good deal or there isn't going to be one.
The Trump administration prioritizing the reopening of the crucial waterway in any deal, as well as Iran relinquishing its enriched uranium and dismantling its nuclear program. Here's Fox News senior strategic analyst General Jack Keane.
The administration negotiators got their eyes wide open here. They know exactly what's at play here. But I just want to make sure our audience understands how significant this really is in terms of Iran not having any control over the Straits of Hormuz and it being returned to an area of freedom of navigation. And then the rest of it is very complicated, as we have seen over many, many weeks and even prior to conflict operations, dealing with nuclear issues, dismantling, getting rid of the enrichment that it has, and also pushing back on ballistic missile development and support for proxies.
Complete coverage on this situation in Iran. Former Pentagon official and retired U.S. Navy Captain Brent Sadler will join me in moments. First, to our chief foreign correspondent, Trey Yingst. He's on the ground in Tel Aviv, Israel. He's got an update for us. Trey.
Yes, Andrew, good morning. Overnight, the United States launched airstrikes against southern Iran near the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM described these strikes as defensive in nature, as they were targeting mine-laying vessels and at least one surface-to-air missile position. These were the first U.S. strikes that have targeted Iran since early May. The strikes do come amid the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts to reach an agreement between Iran and the United States. Overnight, President Trump laid out the latest conditions, saying on Truth Social, the enriched uranium nuclear dust will either be immediately turned over to the United States to be brought home and destroyed, or preferably in conjunction and coordination with the Islamic Republic of Iran, destroyed in place or at another acceptable location, with the Atomic Energy Commission or its equivalent being witness to this process and event. Thank you for your attention to this matter. A regional intelligence official told Fox News no less important is the dismantlement of Iran's enrichment facilities. That way, not only will Iran not have enriched material, they also won't have the means to enrich more. The key to preventing Iran from getting its hands on a nuclear weapon is taking the bullets, but also taking the gun itself. With talks ongoing, the Iranians are speaking out. Today, with the country's supreme leader, Mustafa Khamenei, posting on X, the United States will no longer have a safe haven for its mischief and for establishing military bases in West Asia. And Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian saying this.
They did not imagine that our armed forces, our defensive power, and our offensive system could perform such feats. It was a completely surprising matter for all of them.
We're also tracking developments in the conflict between Israel and Iran's largest proxy, Hezbollah. The Israelis have vowed to ramp up strikes on the group amid ongoing drone and rocket attacks launched from southern Lebanon.
I want to bless the residents of the North's resilience that inspires all of us. But what this requires of us now is to increase the blows, to increase the intensity. We will smite them with overwhelming force.
And Sandra, some breaking news right now. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the United States has launched a renewed Project Freedom to escort vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. Sandra?
All right. Thank you very much for the update. Trey Yingst there in Tel Aviv for us. In focus now, Brent Sadler, retired Navy captain and former Pentagon official. Brent, thank you very much for joining. Obviously, a very developing situation. First, get your thoughts off the top here on what you see the Trump administration doing next with Iran.
Well, it's good news to hear that Project Freedom is getting restarted to get the rest of U.S. flagships out of the Persian Gulf, but also trying to show and demonstrate to the world that it's the U.S. that actually controls the access to and from the Straits of Hormuz. I think it's important to also acknowledge the fact that taking away Iran's perceived leverage by its threats to the Straits of Hormuz makes it more likely that they make the concessions necessary to get the type of deal that will end this conflict.
Speaking of which, the type of deal that will end this conflict, as you just heard there from administration officials and cabinet members, including Marco Rubio, he very clearly said this deal has to be a good deal. If it's not, there's no deal. So what do you see as the chances right now that they will come to terms they can agree on?
Well, Well, I think the key thing is what other military force we're going to have to use against them to ensure that shipping flows safely. And I think once the regime in Tehran realizes that they don't have any leverage over the United States, certainly not over President Trump, over threatening the shipping there, I think we'll probably find that it'll be a very quick process to getting to an agreement. But to date, the Iranians continue to try and seize any opportunity to try to extend or delay these negotiations and buy for time. So we'll know, I think, once Project Freedom is escorting ships, or at least seeing ships safely go through the straits, as a real test.
All right, we hope to get more of an update on that here shortly as that news breaks. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal editorial board asking in its new piece, will Trump bail out Iran's regime with this reported peace deal? An excerpt reads, quote, the basic problem lies with ending U.S. pressure before dismantling the nuclear program. It's fair to wonder if President Trump isn't feeling the growing pressure at home of rising gasoline prices and bond yields as midterm elections get closer. That's no doubt partly behind his desire to reopen the strait, even on Iran's terms. To that you say what, Brent?
No, I don't buy it. I think, quite frankly, the White House is taking actions with national security at the top of the list, not the transitory prices at the pump. I mean, the prices go up every summer. They come down at the end of every summer. And I think once we actually get to an agreement, they'll come down very rapidly. And I don't see this lasting months, given by the endurance of the Iranian regime to continue to tolerate what really is President Trump's, Trump card in this. And that is, we have a blockade on their ports. They can't trade oil. Their key partner, China, is feeling a lot of pain also. And it's really more of an equation of how soon that pressure builds up in Tehran, accelerated by taking away their leverage and their military threats to the straits.
Meanwhile, Brett, President Trump called on more countries to sign on to the Abraham Accords. This happened yesterday in an effort to unite the Middle East region. He discussed it with leaders of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and Jordan, as well as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, both of which are already members. The New York Post editorial board with this headline, Trump's right. Beyond Iran deal, the Abraham Accords are key to lasting peace. Your thoughts on that, Brent?
No, absolutely. It's a very comprehensive approach. It's more than just security and acknowledgement of Israel's right to exist and diplomatic recognition, but also economic. And I think that's actually the path forward to future. And I think for many years, many of the Middle Eastern countries have kind of at least not explicitly acknowledged that. They certainly understand it and are welcoming it. It's hopeful that those that sign on to the accords will grow. It's interesting that President Trump even hinted at even Iran at some point could sign on to that, meaning it's not exclusionary.
Last thought here, Brent. Obviously, the time is ticking, and regardless of whether or not this is weighing on the president's decisions, the midterm elections are nearing. Obviously, energy prices are up. He's acknowledged that this is short-term pain for long-term gain. But what do you see ultimately as the timeline here? What are we looking at?
Well, again, the seasonal summer prices will add a little bit more pressure, or maybe it'll be subsumed inside the already elevated prices. But, as the energy market is already adjusting, it's not waiting for the peace treaty. Ships have come to the United States. New sources of petroleum are coming online. It's going to take longer to completely replace that oil that's coming through the Straits of Hormuz, but that's not the goal. But clearly, the global energy market is not going to be the same again. And I think that reality is also taking some of the pressure off. Yeah. And OPEC is also fracturing, with the UAE departing on the 1st of May. So we may see more supply coming to market from new sources. And I think that adjustment will also have a downward pressure on prices.
We'll certainly be watching for market reaction throughout the day as we do get more word and reporting from the Wall Street Journal on Operation Project Freedom.